Everyone, my name is Tyler, and in this video I want to give you the official video walkthrough for the new CloudGoat scenario called SNS Secrets. Now this is a scenario I created myself, and I have a very detailed walkthrough that goes along with this scenario. My goal for this scenario is it's rated easy, and I want it to be easy, and I want it to teach you some basic AWS enumeration, and I also wanted to teach you some basics of using Paku. Now if you've never heard of Paku is almost like Metasploit for the cloud. It is an offensive tool created by Rhino Security Labs, where I work, the same people who made CloudGoat, that helps you do AWS pen testing in the cloud world with a tool that automates a lot of the process. So I want to show you the scenario, I want to show you Paku, I want to show you some basic AWS enumeration, and I'm going to do my best to take it slow. So the target audience of this video would be those who are relatively new to AWS, relatively new to AWS pen testing. So I'll try to explain some unfamiliar concepts, because let's be real, when you're trying to learn AWS, it's super confusing, because I don't know what AWS's problem is, but when they make resources, they add the craziest names to it, and you have to spend half your time just reading the documentation to know what is going on. So I'll do my best to slow down, and I'm also live streaming right now. So for those of you watching live, if there's anything I do that is not clear to you, please let me know in the comments, and I will slow down and seek to explain it a little bit further. But here we go. Scenario SNS Secrets, size small, difficulty easy. It spins up just a few resources in your AWS environment. Now, as far as setting up CloudGoat initially, that's out of scope for this video. But if you go to the primary CloudGoat GitHub, it explains all the details on how you can set up CloudGoat. Our scenario start, we're going to an AWS access key and a secret key. And actually, while I'm reading this, I'm going to go ahead and get this scenario started so that we don't have to wait around while it launches. So I'm going to do Python 3 cloudgoat.py, and we'll do create SNS secrets. And while that does its thing, let's go back over to here. Our starting point is we're going to receive an AWS access key and a secret key. And here is our goal. We want to get the final flag by invoking the API gateway with the leaked API key. And here's a high level summary. So in this scenario, we're going to be provided with AWS creds. We need to enumerate permissions and then realize we have permissions to list and subscribe to SNS topics. Now, the latest release of Paku, which just came out a week or two ago, added two new modules, this SNS Enum module and this SNS Subscribe module. And I wanted to create this CloudGoat scenario to show off these modules. So I'll show you that. That will then subscribe us to an SNS topic. I know that's confusing language, but I'll cover it in the detailed walkthrough. We will receive an email from the topic with an API key as a debug message, so it's leaked. We will then use the AWS CLI to enumerate the API gateway to figure out the full path. And finally, we'll do a curl request with that API key to get the final flag. Here's the exploitation route right there. Here's a high level walkthrough. Some of it I already covered, but what I wanted to do was make a very detailed walkthrough, both in written format and video format, so anyone, regardless of your experience level, can follow along with this. So we'll go ahead and click this to our detailed cheat sheet, and here is our detailed walkthrough. So after launching the scenario, we will be provided with an access key ID and a secret access key for an IAM role. These will allow us to interact with the AWS account from the IAM role using the CLI, and we can set up an IAM profile with this command. So let me jump back over to our terminal. You can see that our scenario is ready to go, and it provided us with an access key ID and a secret access key. So we're going to do AWS configure profile, and we'll just call this SNS secrets. I think that's actually what I call it in the walkthrough, isn't it? Yep, SNS secrets. And it's going to ask us for an access key ID. So let's go ahead and grab this access key ID from the scenario, and we will paste it in. And it's now going to ask us for the secret access key. So let's grab the secret access key. We'll paste that in. For our region, we can do US East 1, and then just enter for output name. Now, if we jump back to our scenario, it says we can confirm access by running the AWS equivalent of who am I, right? So in Linux, you can do who am I to figure out your user, but in AWS, like most things, they make it a little more confusing. So to run the who am I equivalent in AWS, this is how we do it. We're going to do AWS STS get caller identity, and then pass it our profile, which is SNS secrets. And then that just confirms we are able to authenticate to the AWS environment. And it also provides us for our full username, which is going to be helpful for the enumeration side of it to figure out what permissions our user has access to. Let's jump back over to our walkthrough. So discovering permissions. Now that we have access to an IAM user in the AWS environment, we need to figure out what permissions we have. You do the same thing in both Linux and Windows. If you think of a traditional CTF, you get initial access and you check, hey, what permissions, what privileges do I have? What can I access? Same thing in the cloud, same thing in AWS. This can be done using the AWS CLI. So first, we need to see what policies are connected to our user. Now, the username can be found in the output of what we just saw. If you are following along with this video tutorial, your username right here is going to be different than mine. You're going to have a unique username. So it won't be the same thing. So don't use the same username here. Use the one you got when you ran this command. But we want to go ahead and do AWS IAM list user policies, our username, and our profile. I'm just going to copy it, and I'll explain this a little bit. So we're making a command to the AWS CLI, specifically IAM. Now IAM is kind of like the users in AWS, the user names, user roles. You think of traditional user accounts. That's what IAM is. And we want to list our user policies. So when we have permissions to our user, it creates a policy, which is a JSON file that says, hey, here are the resources you have access to. Here are the things you can do inside of the AWS account. So we want to list the policies connected, of course, to our user. So I'm going to erase the username placeholder here and grab my username right here. And so we'll do that. Now that's going to provide us with a policy name. And if we go back through our walkthrough, we did list user policies. So we have the policy assigned to our account. Now we want to get the specific policy information with get user policy. So let me go ahead and grab that command. We'll paste it in here. And we have just a few placeholders we want to fill in. The first placeholder is, of course, the policy name. And we can grab that from right here. And the next placeholder is our username. And we can grab our username from right here, just like so. Okay, so now we have the actual JSON policy. So let me try to explain this a little bit and take it slow, because I know right away it looks confusing. But once you look at enough of these, it's not as confusing as it looks. We have our username, our policy name. We already know what those two things are, right? We know what our username is. We know what the policy name is. The version, this is always this. And then the action. So this is, hey, what can our user do? So we can do SNS subscribe, SNS receive. Well, we have a bunch of SNS stuff here. Now, you might be new to AWS. You're like, what the heck is SNS? We will get to that once we get to that part of the lab. But for now, just know that we can do a lot of stuff with the AWS SNS. And if you ever don't know what something is as you're doing this, Google is your friend and the AWS docs are your friend. So we can just do, what is AWS SNS, right? So Amazon Simple Notification Service is a managed service, zoom in for you guys, that provides message delivery from publishers to subscribers, also known as producers and consumers. Publishers communicate asynchronously with subscribers by sending messages to a topic, which is a logical access point and communication channel. Clients can subscribe to the SNS topic and receive published messages using a supported endpoint type, such as Amazon Data Firehouse, SQS, Lambda, HTTP, email, mobile push, a bunch of different things. So it's a notification feature. Now, a big thing with SNS is you want to limit who has access to your Amazon SNS, because if you give access to everyone, or worst case scenario, it's public, then someone with malicious intentions can subscribe to your SNS topic. And let's say there's a debug message or sensitive information being transferred across SNS. Well, they're going to be able to subscribe to that topic and almost just like listen in the wire, and they'll be able to get access to that. They can even publish their own stuff. They can cause a lot of issues if SNS is not configured properly. And that's what I wanted to showcase in this scenario. So if we go back to this, we have a lot of permissions with SNS. We have some permissions with IAM. This just allows us to enumerate the access our user has. And we have a get permission for an API gateway. So we know the API gateways might come up, but now we have some specific things we can't do. So you can notice we can do all these things. The effect is allow, and it's a wild card. So it allows us to do it on every resource in the AWS account. We have another action right here, which is API gateway get. So similar to this, but it says here are specific things you cannot get. So the user cannot get API keys. It cannot get methods on via the AWS CLI, because that would allow you to bypass the API requirement. You could just do it via the CLI and you bypass the whole thing. And actually, when I first created this scenario, my friend Dave, who was at Rhino, discovered this right away, and he figured out an unintended way to complete the scenario, but I patched it, and that is now officially patched. But that is what the policy is telling us. So the big things, once again, to keep in mind, we can do stuff with SNS, we can enumerate our permissions with IAM, and we can do some stuff with the API gateway. We can get some information about it. We know the scenario goal is to find an API key and then authenticate to the gateway, so we'll keep all of that in mind. But for now, let's jump back to the official walkthrough. So Amazon SNS, already explained this a little bit, so we won't go over that. But one thing I do want to point out is this. It's important to limit SNS access to specific users to ensure the security and integrity of your messaging system. Unrestricted access could lead to unauthorized users sending spam, triggering unnecessary alerts, or accessing sensitive information. Now, we can enumerate SNS with Paku. Paku is an open source AWS exploitation framework designed for the offensive security testing against cloud environments. Instructions for installing are out of scope, but you can go to the official documentation here, but I'll walk you through some of the basics. Once Paku is installed, we can import our key. So I'll just show you this full process. Over on this side of things, we will go ahead and just type in Paku. Once you get it installed, it will work like this. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new session by hitting 0. And we will call this SNS secrets like so. And we want to go ahead and import the profile we set up. So we'll do import keys. SNS secrets was the profile we set up in AWS. And, so I'm actually really glad this happened. You notice we have a database error right here. With the newest version of AWS, you have to delete the old database. So actually, if I go over to the Paku release, it will explain this. I'm pretty sure it does. Let me jump over to this. Here is Paku, and if you do want to install it, you can do it with pip, literally. You just install Paku. That's all you need to do, right? Pip install Paku, and you should be good to go. But if we go over to our release here that came out 3 days ago, at least at the recording of this video, we have this. This release requires a newly initialized database for previous versions, and you can see all of the changelog. The two things we're showing off are these SNS topic modules, but let's go ahead and remove our previous database. If you're following along and you used Paku in the past, this is the reason you're having that error. You can run this command and it will fix it. And hey, over on Twitch, Germ666, if I'm saying your name right, just subscribe. So hey, thank you, my friend, for the support. I really, really appreciate it. Let me go ahead and grab this command. We'll copy it. We'll just open a new tab and we will run it. All right. And now we'll try this again. Let me just exit, reopen Paku. And we will name our session SNS secrets. Now we can import our keys. SNS secrets, I think is what I called my profile, right? There we go. Now we can search in Paku, right? So if we want to figure out, hey, what modules do we have to do with SNS? Since we have access to that, we can just type search SNS. As simple as that. And it gives us two options. We have SNS subscribe to a simple notification service topic, and we have SNS enum, list and describe simple notification service topics. Now, if we want more information about these modules so we know how they work and what flags they need, we just use the help command. So we can type help SNS enum. And it says this module will attempt to list and gather information from simple notification service topics, and it accepts a region. We know we're working the US East 1 region. So let's try to run this, which is simple. Run SNS enum region US East 1, just like so. And you can see it found one topic. Now, to figure out what topic it found, it stored it to the Paku database. And an easy way to see that when you're within Paku is just by typing data. So we can type data. And there we have the ARN, or the unique identifier of this SNS topic, which if we can subscribe to this topic, hey, maybe they're publishing debug messages, maybe they're publishing sensitive information to this topic, and the fact that we can subscribe, maybe we can use that to get access to some sensitive information. Now, if you remember, we had that other module up here called SNS subscribe. So let's do help and see what that takes. Okay, so this module will attempt to subscribe to a topic based on the ARN, right? And we have the ARN right there via an email address. So we can specify a topic and we can specify an email. Now that means I need to authenticate to my sandbox email. Just gonna stop sharing my screen just for a moment while I get logged into that. My Hack Smarter demo email, here we go. All right. Good to go on that. I will go back to sharing my screen and we will jump over to this module. So let's go ahead and run this module. We'll do run SNS subscribe, and we need to specify our topics. We just have one topic here, so I'm going to copy the topic from up here. We'll do that, and then we need to specify our email, and my email is hacksmarter.demo@gmail.com, and we will just click enter. All right, it says subscribe successfully, check email for subscription information. Let's go over to our email, and you can see, hey, we have the subscription notification. I'm going to confirm my subscription, and we confirmed it. Now we just wait around. Now on the back end, to give you a little behind the scenes glimpse, I have this sending out the data every single minute. So once a minute. So if you don't see it right away, give it literally just a minute and you should get access. In the meantime, we can jump back over to our walkthrough right here. I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. So we imported our keys just like I said. We searched for SNS, SNS enum, SNS subscribe. We ran the SNS enum module. We ran the subscribe module, and we subscribe with our email. And you can see this is where we're at in the walkthrough. So if you are following along in the walkthrough, this is where we're at. We just did that. We just confirmed our subscription. Let's jump back over to our email, and you can see we received a notification message that has a debug API gateway key. So that's, of course, interesting to us, right? That's something that you probably don't want disclosed to anyone who can subscribe to your SNS notification. So I'm going to open up Mousepad right here just so we keep that information there. But we do have the API gateway key. Now, if we jump back to our walkthrough, we have that. Now we need to figure out the API gateway. Specifically, we need to identify the full URL to access the API gateway. Just a fancy word to saying API. It's just a URL that we need to access and then use our key to authenticate to in order to abuse what we just discovered is a misconfiguration in this AWS environment. So the first thing we're going to do is just get all the REST APIs in our account, which is AWS API gateway, get REST APIs. We're specifying the profile that we're authenticated with, which is of course is SNS secrets, and then our region of US East 1. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. For now, we can close out Paku, and I will type in that command. And when we do that, we have some information here. So we have the name of our API gateway. We have the description. You can see it's for demonstrating a leaked API key, and we have our ID right here. So a few things that we want to keep in mind is the name and the ID. I'll go ahead and just copy these, and we'll drop these in Mousepad as well. So there it is. With that information, we need to get the stages and the resource. That's just how we build the URL together, right? So don't let those words confuse you. We just want to figure out what is the full URL that we need to access. And we do this with two different commands. The first is get stages. The second is get resources. So pretty easy to follow and pretty easy to remember. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Your API ID is going to be different than mine, but it says we have a placeholder here for the API ID. The API ID is this right here. So we'll copy that and we will paste it in. Okay, and that provides us with the stage name, which is the first part of the URL. Once we get past the API part, the first path of the URL is the stage name. And now we need to get the resource. So we can see a very similar command right here. Instead of get stages, let's get resources. So we'll do that, and we will also pass in the API. Grab the ID right there, paste it in, and now we have our path. So now we can actually put together the full API. You see we have our stage name and we have our resource path. That's the information that we need, and I even made it really easy down here by giving you the general API gateway. We need our API ID, the stage name, and the resource path. So let's see if we can put all of this together, right? So we have our API ID. We already know that right here. All right, and we have our stage name, which our stage name is this right here. We'll grab this, and we need our resource path, and our resource path is right here. Now let's see what happens if we just try to invoke this without any type of authentication. It should hopefully fail as long as I configured everything correctly. So we'll just do curl, and we'll try to invoke it. And you can see we get a message forbidden because we need an API key in order to invoke this. So let's jump back over to our scenario. And you can see we're going to hit it with curl, but we're going to pass it a header. Now, if you're new to curl, that's just what the dash capital H is an HTTP header. And we're setting the X API key header right here. We can go ahead and copy this, jump over to here. And of course, we want to replace it with our URL. So I'm going to grab our URL. Right there. The API key matches the API key that was leaked right there. So we're going to pass it the X API key header. We're going to hit this. Let's see if this allows us to authenticate and complete the scenario successfully. And there you go. That did allow us to successfully complete the scenario. You can see we got the message access granted, our username, our email, our password, and the final flag for the SNS secret scenario. So hey, hope you enjoyed the scenario. Hope you found it helpful. If you have any feedback, anything, any suggestions as you work through the scenario, anything that was confusing, please reach out to me. You can find me on Discord under just my name, Tyler Ramsby, in the Rhino Security Labs Discord. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me like almost anywhere. Reach out to me. Would love to hear any feedback that you have, good or bad, to help me improve the scenario. So hey, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the scenario, and I will see you in the next one.